Last night, at some point after 2 in the morning, you opened your eyes. Nothing woke you. No noise, no dream, no reason. You just surfaced, stared at the ceiling for a while, checked the time, and felt that small drop in your stomach. The one that says, something is wrong with me. Then you told yourself to go back to sleep. And the harder you tried, the longer it took. Doctors have a word for that. So do the sleep apps, and the supplement ads, and the people selling you magnesium at 1 in the morning. They all call it a problem. But for 300,000 years, every single one of your ancestors did exactly the same thing, on purpose, every night. And they had a word for it too. The answer changes everything we think we know about insomnia, rest, and what your body is actually trying to do at 3 a.m. Let's start with what you've been told, because it's the reason this feels like a malfunction in the first place. The standard explanation is cortisol. Your stress hormone starts climbing in the early hours to prepare you for waking, and if you're anxious or overworked, it climbs too early and jolts you awake. That's not wrong exactly. Cortisol does rise, stress does make it worse. But notice what that explanation assumes. It assumes the baseline, the correct, natural, healthy thing, is 8 unbroken hours, one block. Lights out at 11, lights on at 7, nothing in between. Anything else is a deviation, a symptom, something to fix. That assumption is about 200 years old. Before the industrial age, nobody slept that way. Not in Europe, not in Africa, not anywhere we have records. The 8-hour block you're measuring yourself against, the one that makes you feel broken at 3 a.m., is younger than the United States. And the person who proved it spent 16 years buried in documents nobody else thought to read. But here's what's fascinating. In 2001, a historian named Roger Ekirch published a paper that broke sleep science open. He hadn't been looking for it. He was researching nighttime in pre-industrial Europe, working through court depositions, diaries, prayer books, medical texts, letters from ordinary people who had no reason to lie about something so mundane. And the same phrase kept appearing, over and over, in different countries, different centuries, different languages. First sleep, and then, hours later, second sleep. He found more than 500 references. A prayer book from the 1400s with devotions written specifically for the hours between them. Court records where a witness places a crime after first sleep, and everyone in the room knows exactly what time that means. Chaucer used it. There are passages in Homer's Odyssey that only make sense if you read them this way. Here's what it described. People went to bed shortly after dark. They slept about 4 hours. Then they woke. Not startled, not distressed, just awake, and stayed awake for 1 to 2 hours. Then they slept another 4 hours until dawn. That waking period wasn't a failure of the first sleep. It was its own thing, with its own name. In English they called it the watch. And people did things in it. They prayed. They talked quietly to whoever was lying next to them. They interpreted their dreams while the dreams were still warm. A 16th century French physician recommended it as the best time for couples to conceive, on the grounds that they'd be rested and would do a better job of it. A doctor's manual from the 1500s advised that the watch was the ideal time to study and reflect. The mind calm, the world still, nothing pulling at you. Historians had been reading these references for centuries. They just kept mistranslating them. The assumption that sleep comes in one block was so deep that scholars quietly reworded ancient Greek and medieval Latin to make it fit what they did at night. But history alone doesn't prove anything about your body. What happened next is the part that should unsettle you. In 1992, a psychiatrist named Thomas Wehr at the National Institute of Mental Health ran a study that didn't involve treating anyone. He took a group of healthy volunteers and simply took the light away. For a month, they lived with 14 hours of darkness every night, roughly what a human being would have experienced in winter before artificial light, no lamps, no screens, no candles, just dark. For the first few weeks, they slept the way modern people sleep. One long block, badly. Then something started to happen. Their sleep split in two. Every participant settled into the same pattern, around 4 hours of sleep, then 1 to 3 hours of quiet wakefulness, then 4 more hours of sleep. Nobody instructed them to do this. Nobody suggested it was possible. Their bodies simply reorganized themselves the moment the light stopped interfering, as if a program had been sitting there the whole time, waiting for the right conditions to run. And then Wehr measured what was happening during the gap, which is the part almost nobody talks about. The volunteers weren't lying there, frustrated. Their blood showed elevated prolactin, the hormone your body releases during deep relaxation, meditation, and after orgasm. Their brains were producing a state that doesn't map onto ordinary wakefulness at all. They described it as peaceful, reflective, almost meditative. Several said it was the calmest they had felt in years. It wasn't a gap between two sleeps. It was a third state. And most people alive today have never been in it. So what killed it? The answer is simpler than you'd think. Light. In the 1600s, cities started installing street lamps. Paris first, under Louis XIV, who wanted to cut down on crime. London followed, then cheaper candles, then gas lamps in the 1800s. Then, in 1879, Edison commercialized the bulb, and within a single generation, the night that humans had known for 300,000 years was gone. Your body never got the memo. It still reads light the only way it knows how. When light hits your retina at 11 at night, your brain doesn't distinguish between a lamp and the sun. It reads daytime, delays melatonin, and pushes your entire internal clock backward by hours. Researchers have found that people who go camping for a single week with no artificial light reset their melatonin timing by nearly 2 hours. Their bodies start producing it at sunset again, the way it's supposed to work. 1 week. That's all it takes for the old programming to come back. So here's what's actually happening at 3 a.m. You're going to bed hours later than your body expects, on a delayed clock with a brain still lit up from a screen. You get your 4 hours. And then the second half of the ancient pattern arrives right on schedule. The watch, opening like it has for thousands of generations. Except now there's nobody awake to talk to, no fire, nothing to do with it. Just you, in the dark, with a phone within reach and an alarm set for 7, which means the thing you've been calling a disorder might not be one. Real insomnia exists, and this isn't that. If you can't fall asleep for hours, if you're waking 6 times a night, if you're exhausted all day, that's a genuine medical problem, and it's worth taking to a doctor. Nothing here replaces that. But if your pattern is the specific one, down early-ish, solid sleep, awake around 2 or 3, calm but alert, then sleepy again after an hour or so, you may not be malfunctioning at all. You may be running correctly on hardware that got installed a very long time ago. It wasn't a defect, it was a feature, one that only looks like a defect because we built a world with no room for it. And that reframe changes what happens next. Because the damage at 3 a.m. mostly isn't the waking, it's the panic about the waking. You check the clock, calculate how little sleep is left, and flood your system with exactly the stress hormone that makes falling back asleep hard. The anxiety doesn't come from the pattern, it comes from believing the pattern is wrong. The people in Wehr's study weren't distressed when they woke because nobody had told them they were supposed to be asleep. For most of human history, the middle of the night was the quietest hour anyone got. No work, no obligations, no one asking anything of you. Your ancestors lay there in the dark, in a state modern science barely has a name for, and thought about their lives. What happened that day? What they'd dreamed, what they'd have to face when the light came back. It was the only time in a hard, loud, crowded life when nothing at all was required of them. We didn't lose that because something went wrong with us. We lost it because we flooded the night with light and called it progress, and then started diagnosing everyone whose body hadn't caught up. So, tonight, When you open your eyes at 3 in the morning and reach for your phone to see how bad it is, you could just not. Lie there. Let the hour be what it was built to be. It's the oldest part of you, still keeping watch, in a world that stopped needing it.